Hi guys, and welcome to a new video. Welcome to the channel if you're new here. I'm Ollie and this is Turner's Workshop. And in this video we're going to be carrying on with this John Deere 3320 tractor service. In particular we're going to be doing the hydraulic system. If you haven't seen the previous video, I covered the engine service in that one, so I'll put a link to that video in the description below. You can do this servicing separately, and that's why I've broken it into two different videos, just for those of you that want to watch the engine servicing and those of you that want to watch the hydraulic servicing. If you haven't yet seen the engine service, then let me give you a quick recap of what we cover in that video. So I started off by giving the tractor a thorough clean, and this is just to make sure that we don't get any dirt in the engine or in the hydraulic transmission system. I then drive the tractor around to warm up all the fluids, and I operate the front loader and the rear arms as well, just to make sure that we get all the hydraulic fluid moving around and warmed up, and this will help it drain out. Once the engine was warmed up, I parked it on some level ground with a tarpaulin underneath it so any oil spills won't soak into the ground. I then got all the materials that I need for the service, and there'll be links in the description below to anything you may need. I show you how to replace the air filter. We drain out the old engine oil and replace the oil filter. And then we fill it up with genuine John Deere 15W40 engine oil. Only the best for this tractor. I also point out that underneath the bonnet on one side you've got the service intervals list, and then over on the other side you've got the fluid capacities, which is a nice reference to have. And finally, in that video I talk you through the fuel system and how to replace the fuel filters. Let's start off by lowering the front loader all the way down to the ground, making sure that the rams are fully retracted. And we'll do the same with the rear hitch as well, just lower it down to the ground, and then that way most of the hydraulic fluid should have drained back to the tank. With the engine off, operate the hydraulic levers in all directions. This will release any pressure and allow the remaining oil to drain back to the tank. And this is how we want to be checking our hydraulic fluid level once all the rams are retracted and the hydraulic fluid is back in the reservoir. So just pop the dipstick out and check the level, and it should be within the hatched area on the dipstick, which it is, so that's all good. While we're here, let me just point out where the fill cap is for the hydraulic system. It's a yellow cap on the top of the rear axle. So as always, let's just make sure we can take that cap off before we drain all the fluid out. The last thing you want to do is drain the fluid out and then realise you can't fill it back up again because you can't get the cap off. This tractor has a lot of hydraulic fluid in it, approximately 26.5 litres according to the data plate on the bonnet. So we're going to need a pretty large container to take all of that. I've got this old chemical drum, so let's just cut a hole in the side of it and we can use it as our catch tray. You may be wondering why it takes so much fluid, and that's because it's a hydrostatic drive model. Underneath the tractor, the drain point for the hydraulic fluid is here. Our main suction oil filter is here, and there's also another drain plug underneath it, but I'll show you that a little bit later on. I didn't have a socket that fits this, so I just used a large adjustable spanner. Once I'd loosened it off, I could remove it completely by hand, getting ready to catch the copious amounts of oil that's going to come out of it. Now, just to put this into perspective for you and give you a fun fact, a blue whale on a single ejaculation can release 20 to 40 litres of sperm. That's sick! And how the hell do scientists even know that? While that's draining out, let me show you how to change the inline hydraulic filter. It does say in the manual that you can just clean these inline hydraulic filters out, but I don't think this one's ever been cleaned or replaced before, so I've got a brand new one here to go on it. And there's a part number if you want to get one, and I'll put a link below. They are around £100, but in my opinion that's quite a small price to pay for a really important part in the hydraulic system. This is essentially keeping the hydraulic fluid nice and clean, catching any small bits of dirt or debris that may be caught up in the system, and protecting any of the key components such as the hydraulic pumps and motors, which will cost a hell of a lot more than £100 if they get any problems, so maybe just replace it. We're going to need a couple of large adjustable spanners for this, or if you've got the right size spanners, even better. You will want a catch tray underneath this because it will have oil in it still. I thought both of the nuts were union types so you could move them, but it seems like the one on the left was fixed to the pipe, so I had to unscrew the filter from that captive nut. Whereas a nut on the right hand side of the filter is more of a union type, so you can slide the nut back. It does get very tight, and these pipes are rigid pipes, they're not very flexible, so yeah, you do have to struggle with it a little bit. But there we go, we've got the filter out. I was a little bit concerned at the size difference between the new filter and the old one, but I am reassured that this bigger one does fit the 3320 tractor. I think John Deere have changed some of their parts, because the oil filter was a different size as well, even though it had the same part number, and it's the same with this inline hydraulic filter. I'm going to have a little moan now, because this new hydraulic filter that I just paid £100 for didn't come with any O-rings. What the heck, John Deere? Just bear that in mind if you get this oil filter, it doesn't come with O-rings. I'll try and find them as a separate part and include it in the description below. Because I didn't have any new O-rings, I had to reuse the old ones, so I just transferred those over carefully, trying not to damage them, and then we can refit this back on the tractor. Before fitting the new filter, I just give it a wipe out to make sure that it's nice and clean and the surfaces are smooth. I then screw on the new filter. It's a little bit difficult because it's slightly bigger than the last one, so you have to wrestle with the pipes a little bit, obviously being careful not to damage them. And then we can tighten it up. So I start off by tightening the filter into the captive nut on the left. You're going to need a really large adjustable spanner for this, so just get that on there and then tighten it into the captive nut on the left, holding against so that you don't damage the pipe. So just nip it up, and then you need to tighten the union nut onto the filter. Give it a little nip, and that's it. Meanwhile, underneath the tractor, we're down to a few drips of oil. And now I'm going to show you how to change the main suction oil filter. I tried to remove the cap using this ratchet strap tool I use for removing oil filters, but it was on there really tight and I wasn't having much luck. So I resorted to using a hammer and a punch just to loosen it off, and once it got going I could remove it by hand. If you've got a soft metal drift, that would be even better so you don't damage the cover, but you can be quite gentle with it, just give it a few little taps and then you can loosen it off by hand. Remove the cover and allow the rest of the oil to drain out, and then you can remove the filter. Having a look at the old oil filter, I could see a small speck of metal or something in there, so it's doing its job protecting those components in the hydraulic system. Once we're down to a few drips, I give it a good wipe out and then fit the new filter. Make sure the filter cover's nice and clean, and then you can screw it back on. And to tighten this up, I use my oil filter strap wrench. It doesn't need to be super tight because it seals up with an O-ring around the cover, so just nip it up and then we can refit the sump plug as well. I believe this type of sump plug has a taper seal on the bottom of it, so you don't require any PTFE because that could end up in your hydraulics and damage them. You don't need a crush washer, it's not that type, so just tighten it up until it stops and then give it a little nip. Our hydraulic filter cover's back on, that sump plug's back on, but there's one more on the bottom just to drain out the last little bit of oil in the sump, and this is where any sediment will sit, so let's remove that one. And you need a 3/8 square drive to remove this plug, so just take that out and drain off the last bit of hydraulic fluid. There's a magnet on this plug as well, so make sure you clean that off and get rid of any little bits of swarf that are on there. And once we're down to a few drips, we can refit that plug and tighten it up. I couldn't find any large drums of the John Deere High Guard transmission oil, so we're going to be using this Manol universal transmission oil, which meets the John Deere 20C standard. So it'll be good quality oil and no doubt at a fraction of the cost. I start by pouring in 20 litres and then just get underneath the tractor and check to make sure that we don't have any leaks. I then open another drum of oil and carry on filling it up until it starts registering on the dipstick, and once I was happy with the level, you can see the level there is just sitting the top of the second cross. I operate all the hydraulics and check that it's working. Next up, we're going to be changing the front axle oil. So the fill plug is located right on the top of the axle, it's this yellow one right here. So take that out and check the current oil level. This actually looks quite low, surprisingly. There are 3 drain plugs on the front axle. You've got one on each hub and one on the front differential. So let me just point them out to you. There's one. There's the one on the front diff, right on the bottom. And then you've got the other one on the near side hub. You'll need an imperial set of Allen keys or hex sockets for the front drain plugs. I believe the hubs are 5/16 and the front diff is 1/4 inch. So just remove the plugs one at a time and allow the oil to drain. It's only a small hole, so it does take a little while to drain out. Remove the fill cap and that should help it drain out because it will allow the axle to vent. You can drain most of the oil out of one hub, but you'll still have to drain the other hub, and there'll be a little bit of oil left in the front diff case as well. If you've got multiple catch trays, you can obviously drain out the other hub at the same time. So let's do that and take the other plug out. And once the other side's finished draining, we then just need to take the diff plug out and drain off the last little bit of fluid in there. So clean up the plugs and refit them. And we're just going to snug these down like we did at the rear axle. And once the plugs are fitted and tightened up, not too much, just snug them down, we can then fill it with our fresh oil. And it uses the same oil as the hydraulic and transmission system, so that's nice and easy. And if you get two 20-litre drums, you'll have enough to do the whole tractor, with a little bit left over, just for topping up if you need to. I put about 4 litres of oil in the front axle and then drive it round in a figure of 8, and that's to distribute the oil across the front axle so we can get a true reading on the dipstick. After taking it out for a spin, I then let the axle settle for a minute before measuring the level with the dipstick. And it varies by manufacturer, but with John Deere dipsticks, apparently you don't screw it in to take the measurement, you just dip it in, and then there we go, we can see it's at the top of the hatched area. You may need to top it up, you may need to drain a little bit out. It's no hardship if you overfill it a little bit. I have to say I did overfill it slightly, so I just popped one of the plugs out of the hub and dropped the level down to the top of the hatched markings. I was also asked to sharpen the flails on the attachment, so first of all I removed the key so no one could start it up and turn it on while I was underneath it. I'd also recommend putting some blocks under it just so that if the hydraulics fail it's not going to crush you. This actually reminds me of the film The Happening with Mark Wahlberg in it. If you've seen it, you'll know the scene I'm talking about with the lawnmower. If you haven't seen it, it's a great film, you should check it out. Right, let's get back on topic. These are the flails we're sharpening up, and I'm just going to use an angle grinder to put a 45-degree beveled edge on the flails. You don't want it to be razor sharp because that'll make them weak and really brittle. This is used for taking down shrubbery and leveling off the ground, so they do take a real battering. And if you've got a really thin edge, they'll just go blunt really quickly. And like a lawnmower blade, you want to do this evenly on each flail so that it keeps the shaft balanced. Obviously if you take off loads of metal off of one flail and not a lot off the other side, then it's going to throw out the balance on the shaft. And that will lead to excessive vibrations and premature machine failure. I finish off by greasing up the bearings at each end of the flail shaft, and that's it, that's job done. Thank you ever so much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it and you found it useful. If you have, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Consider subscribing if you're not already subscribed, and if you click the alarm bell, you'll get notifications when I post new videos. And hopefully I'll see you again soon. Cheers guys, take care.